Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always, still coming in hot from Toronto, still freezing my tush off. And I'm super pumped to have today's guest on the show, coming in hot 5 hours away from me in the capital of Canada. And I bet most of you guys, if I asked you, what is the capital of Canada? I would say 80% of you would probably say Toronto. But the capital is actually Ottawa, a beautiful city 5 hours away from Toronto. And this is where our guest is coming in hot from today. We have Aaron Evans, head of operations at Moonbeam Foundation. Aaron is an experienced software engineer, executive, and technical leader who has been working with Moonbeam and ecosystem projects since 2021. This guy is a jack of all trades and is especially skilled in crypto, people management, and startups. He's done it all. Super pumped to have a fellow Canadian on the show. Aaron, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me, Matt. Really appreciate it. I'm super excited to be on the show.
Pumped to have you on. Always nice to have a Canadian on board. And it's always cool when I have someone a little close by. My last guest was in Singapore and I was recording at night. She was in the morning. And it's like, wow, it's crazy how the world works, but glad to have you close by.
Yeah.
Today, folks, we are recording on Wednesday, January 3rd. When you listen to this episode, it will be on Monday, January 8th. We just had a multi-billion-dollar liquidation. The Bitcoin wick went from 45 straight down to 41. And this was on the news of, I forget who the firm was, someone I've never even heard of before, throwing out a tweet.
Matrixport,
yeah,
I think.
Matrixport. I'm like, how do these guys have so much pull? I've never even heard of them. Have you?
No, I hadn't heard of them. No. And it's like one guy's opinion, I think, or something. I don't know.
Exactly. It's like the Cointelegraph intern who threw out the Bitcoin ETF approved tweet and gave us the $4,000 wick. Now we have the bad color red $4,000 wick. Aaron, what's going on here? When is crypto finally going to have a little bit more legitimacy? And when are these crazy wicks going to stop? Will they ever stop? What's your 2 cents on this whole massive liquidation?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. Crypto's just, crazy, right? And just wild swings. And, I think that things will level out the more mainstream it becomes. And I think it's just still so early in its history and so forth that and there's so much sort of speculation around it. But like over time, as the technology matures, becomes firmly embedded in enterprise applications and so forth, under the hood, then people pay less attention to the individual, technology stacks and this kind of thing. And maybe some of the wild speculation will go away. But on the other hand, you have DeFi. I think that's just, it runs 24/7, unlike traditional markets. So who knows? Maybe we're in for wild rides forever. I don't know. But I don't know what's going on with this latest ETF news. Who knows if this guy has the inside track? It beats me. Last I heard, it was pretty much a lock.
Same.
For mid-January or so forth. So who knows?
Part of me also thinks that this is like, again, if I'm BlackRock and I'm the biggest asset manager in the world, in the whole wide world, part of me is like, okay, if I'm going to launch this thing and I'm going to have to buy, and mind you, they've already, if it goes down, they've definitely already bought tens of thousands of Bitcoin. They're definitely already accumulating. They could very well be the catalyst behind this sort of October to present day, early January rip that we've had. But if I'm BlackRock, I definitely want to tank the price a little bit more before we launch this thing. You know what I mean? Like, and if I have that much power, and I know Larry Fink does have this much power, like that's what I'm doing personally.
It's really kind of going to be a little bit careful not to raise the ire of the SEC by doing some market manipulation. But who knows? Maybe you're right. I think the thing with this sort of cash versus in-kind contributions, this plays a little bit of trickiness as well, because they can't just take the Bitcoin that they have and load it into the ETF. They'll have to do some kind of cash transaction. You kind of wonder where that runs through, who does those transactions, and how that impacts the market as well.
100%. Let's get into the bread and butter of the show here. 2 parts. First is you. Second is Moonbeam. We'll start with Moonbeam. Walk me through Moonbeam 101. Give me the TLDR, give me the elevator pitch, a little bit of the history, a little bit of the vision. You guys have your 2-year anniversary coming up in Jan 2024.
That's right.
Present day, love to see that. You guys have quickly turned yourselves into a behemoth in the space. Just sort of connectivity 101. Anything app and smart contract related with a multitude of various blockchains. You guys are just connectivity gurus, and everyone always talks about interoperability, how important it is. You guys are doing that. So give us the elevator pitch, give us the intro on Moonbeam, bit of the history, bit of the vision, and then we'll get into the fun stuff here.
Sure. Yeah, no, happy to. So Moonbeam launched in January 2022. And as you mentioned, we have our 1-year anniversary coming up very shortly on the 11th. So we're super excited about that. But the story really began, way before that with the initial founding of the project and the vision. In short, I would say that, Moonbeam is a smart contract platform for building decentralized applications that can access users and assets on any chain. It's a developer-oriented protocol. We're sort of targeting builders, developers, and so on. So that's sort of the very short elevator pitch. The original vision, and this original vision continues to kind of influence what we're working on today, I'll add. So I think the theory was, way back in, 2020, 2019, the theory was that in a future world, there will be many blockchains. And they're going to specialize for specific use cases or functions. They'll excel in certain areas and have, all these things will have pluses and minuses. And some of them make it, I think some people think they'll get very app focused or function focused, right? So some excel at storage, some excel at transactions and smart contracts and so forth. And so the thinking was that connectivity between them will be a critical capability. And I think we've seen that happen. I think, just look at, the major GMP protocols like Axelar, Wormhole, Layer 0. Those are super important. We see, Chainlink also coming into the space. So I think that part definitely, seems to have come true. I think back when the project was founded, we were taking a look at what frameworks were available for building specialized chains, and then where's a good home for such a chain if we're going to launch such a chain. And so I think we're attracted to Substrate as a modular development toolkit for building blockchains. And I think we're seeing a lot of adoption. I think I heard even Cardano is moving to Substrate as well. So that just seemed to be a really good choice for building blockchains just because of its modularity. It's written in Rust. It's one of the more modern frameworks. And then we came across Polkadot, and Polkadot was obviously an environment designed to connect Substrate chains together. So that seemed like a natural place and a natural tech stack to use. And I think one of the things that sort of became evident, and I think now it seems very obvious in hindsight, but back in 2019, 2020, that EVM, despite some of its challenges, would continue to be the preferred tech stack for application developers. And we see that, obviously, that's still true today. There's many, many EVM chains. There's a lot of L2s using it. I'm going to sort of date myself here, but I see it kind of like VCRs. That's super old school tech. But Beta was better, but like VHS had licensing and it became the standard.
Yeah.
It became the standard. You could get the, JVC like VHS or a VHS player for cheap. Like Beta thinks that Sony tried to stay proprietary. And so EVM seemed to be the natural choice. So we thought, hey, what we'll do is we'll make an Ethereum-like environment in Substrate, and that would be very useful in this multi-chain ecosystem of Polkadot and beyond for connecting chains together.
Very well said there.
That's sort of the history. And as I said, that sort of continue on that vision even today.
Just sort of a half on, half off topic question. How do you guys choose what chains to work with? Because I feel like everyone's knocking on your guys' door being like, hey, help us connect to other chains, blah, blah, blah. How do you vet which applications, protocols, companies to work with? Because there's so many of them, and it takes a lot of back-end, front-end work to really work on all the pieces of the pie to make each blockchain connect and work with each other and to make it fully interoperable. Like, how do you guys say yes and no to people who come in and teams that come in and companies that come in and want to work with you guys? Like, what's that workflow look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. There's a number of different angles from which, people are coming to us or sometimes we're going to them. I think when it comes to the Polkadot ecosystem, it's fairly straightforward. And in fact, we let our community decide. So in order to connect chains in the Polkadot ecosystem, XCM channel, so that's the cross-chain messaging consensus, format that allows the chains to interoperate under a shared security umbrella. So other chains in Polkadot, they can just put forth a governance motion on Moonbeam, and if it's voted through by the community, then the connection is established. Now, there's more sometimes to get their assets listed.
You give that much power to the community.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
we've
wild.
made the last year we've done a tremendous amount to empower the community and further decentralization. Substrate allows us to have forkless upgrades. We've done 6 major upgrades over the past year, so probably 15 or more since inception. But so just getting back to, through the Polkadot ecosystem, they can connect to us. Now, if they want to get their assets listed in our official DApp, there is more of an approval process there. There's forms they got to fill out and kind of provide links back to things like security audits and because there's certain disclaimers we want to highlight for people if they still have sudo enabled or something like this, So that's sort of the Polkadot side. I would say for teams that want to deploy and seeking grants, we have a little grants program for people that want to work with us in that way. And then for connecting to chains outside of Polkadot, our angle there has just been to work with the major GMP protocols, as I mentioned. So we have Axelar, Layer 0, Wormhole, Hyperlane, all deployed to Moonbeam. And that's our strategy for interoperability with chains outside of Polkadot ecosystem. And I think what we found is a lot of parachains are leveraging Moonbeam. The chains in Polkadot are leveraging Moonbeam as a conduit to reach other ecosystems, which is quite interesting how that's developed.
You keep mentioning Polkadot. I love, and this is totally on me here, I need to do my research, but I'd love if you could give a quick little TLDR on the difference between Polkadot and Polkadot 2.0, the dot unlock. And again, this is more my curiosity than anything else. I'm sure the listeners would like to learn about this as well. But what's been going on in the Polkadot ecosystem? A lot of things have been happening. I'd love if you could just give me a quick little sort of TLDR on the difference between 1.0 and 2.0, and then segue into the dot unlock.
Sure. Yeah. No, happy to. So, Polkadot, Gavin Wood came up with the idea of Polkadot, and it really is a tremendous tech stack.
Yeah.
Moonbeam in itself is just useful without Polkadot. I mean, it's deployed on Polkadot, but when application developers deploying to it, they may or may not be super interested in the Polkadot aspects. But it's an amazing framework and base for us to deploy upon. Polkadot 1.0 is such that where there's the relay chain, which is providing the Polkadot relay chain, which is providing shared security across all the quote unquote parachains. So that's more of sort of the layer 0, not to be confused with the layer 0 GMP protocol. And then there are all these L1 parachains which deploy on Polkadot. Now, you don't want to have a bazillion of these things. There are limits to the scale. So there are slots that you have to obtain in order to have your chain deployed in the Polkadot ecosystem. And in Polkadot 1.0, the way you would get a slot is by winning an auction. And so you would have to bid with some amount of dots, and there are so many auctions and so much time, and you have to win your slot, and then you have basically a lease for some period of time to operate. Now, each slot is then you can think of as gets a dedicated core, is what they call it. So you have a dedicated amount of transaction processing that each slot is allocated. And so I'll come back to that in a minute. But this auction framework is one of the things that it's kind of a pain because we've renewed ours somewhat recently. And we've done it a bunch of times with our incentivized test network, Moon River. But it is a pain. It requires a lot of preparation. And if for whatever reason, if you screw it up, your chains can be offline.
You're hooped.
So it's not amazing. So with Polkadot 2.0, there's a couple of major changes. So one, they would do away, and they're kind of related. They're going to do away with the auctions, and there'll be a marketplace for buying core time. And in addition, the core time is more agile in the sense that instead of each parachain getting a dedicated core, it's more adaptable, where you may or may not be using they can slice and dice the cores that are available to all the chains. And so this way, because what you have right now, there are some parachains when they initially launch, there's not a lot of activity. they're just producing empty blocks, but you still need a dedicated core processing those empty blocks. So this way, that wouldn't be required. You would only use the core time that you need with actual transactions that need to be validated. So there's sort of that marketplace for paying for core time. And so because they have that marketplace, they can also do away with the auctions. So and they'll get a lot more throughput and scalability with Polkadot 2.0 across the ecosystem.
Very interesting. Another topic, Aaron, I'd love to get into is DeFi on Moonbeam. DeFi has sort of had a massive resurgence. It's almost like DeFi winter. It was like DeFi autumn over the last couple of months, and now we're still sort of buzzing on DeFi winter. You have airdrops. It is literally just airdrop city population us. If you have contributed to almost any new, and more specifically Solana-based DeFi platform, you have a lot of Atom and Cosmos DeFi platforms as well. Over the last little bit, you're just getting free money, which is pretty bananas. Also on that topic, a little off topic here, the IRS, I don't know if you saw that news that came out yesterday, where if you get an airdrop over $10,000, you have 15 days to report it or you're hooped. Now, again, thankfully that doesn't apply to us, but then again, anything that happens in the States, we usually copy. So I'm sure that will be coming our way as well. What new opportunities are you excited about for DeFi on Moonbeam as a whole?
Yeah, so I think we have a great DeFi ecosystem. I think that macro forces, what they are, DeFi, as you said, it's gone through a bit of a winter period. There seems to be a resurgence. Yeah. Definitely signs in the market. So great to see that moving again. Moonbeam being an EVM smart contract environment is going to naturally, DeFi projects are naturally going to be attracted to something like that. And I think that was one of the first use cases to come to Moonbeam. And we have, several DEX and AMM solutions. We have BeamSwap and StellaSwap. We have a lending protocol, Moonwell. There's a lot of liquid staking of DOT going on and so forth. So a lot going on there. I think what I'm really excited about, though, is to see that combine with the cross-chain use cases and technology that we've developed. So for example, Prime Protocol is a cross-chain Prime brokerage. They have connected to 8 EVM chains, including Moonbeam. And it's designed to function across multiple chains, and it uses Moonbeam as the central point for integrating functionalities across those chains. So it's sort of a hub and spoke model. And so instead of, the initial approach when Moonbeam first launched, all these DeFi projects would be like, oh, okay, here's more users. There's a venue over here. I better deploy an instance over there. Yeah. But now you have these 2 instances. So you have fragmented liquidity, you have fragmented user bases, you have to manage them separately. So it's kind of like going back to the old web days where, before there were these major multi-tenanted applications, you've got these different standalone islands to manage. And that comes with its host of problems. And so in a model like this, you actually have more of a single instance of an application that operates across multiple chains. And I think we're just going to see a lot more of that. It has its own complexities and security concerns and technical challenges, but in the end, it's going to give a superior user experience. It's going to be more manageable, and it's really going to allow teams to scale their applications to reach the most number of users and manage their liquidity in the most efficient ways. So I think taking DeFi and combining that with the cross-chain connected capabilities of Moonbeam is really exciting. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I love that. It's crazy, this resurgence of DeFi. And I love to see it. I mean, the word itself, decentralized finance, it is a powerful one. And I think that's going to be one of the applications that really gets the masses on board. But right now, still the UX is just absolutely horrendous. Setting up wallets, writing down seed phrases, it's still nightmare fuel. And I don't think anyone's really moving the needle too far in that regard. Account abstraction needs to be much better. And man, oh man, it's got to happen sooner rather than later, because I feel like we're getting, I don't want to say close, but I just feel like we need more mass adoption use cases sooner rather than later, or else we as a whole, speaking on behalf of the whole crypto community, will never get the chance to go mainstream. That's just my take, but who knows? Aaron, we have to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show. That is Prime XBT. And when we get back, we are going to keep buzzing on blockchain scalability, some governance, decentralization, emerging markets for blockchain, And a super cool use case, and I can't wait to get into this. You guys loaded Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu certificates that are on Moonbeam Network. That is so friggin' cool. And we'll get into that in 1 second. But until then, huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. Prime XBT offers a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is running an exclusive promo for listeners of the pod. Use the promo code CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Aaron. Let's get right into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because that is so cool. You guys, this was on your Twitter on December 15th. Official Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu certifications coming out of Brazil. This is the creme de la creme of, MMA and, any type of combat. Like, these guys are the GOATs. All the best UFC fighters all have experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It, separates the best from the mids. And you guys put this on chain. Walk me through the whole story. This is so freaking cool. How did you make this happen? Give us some of the goods here.
Yeah, I think it's a super cool use case. I remember telling my kids, because they're always kind of like, what do you do with this blockchain stuff? It's like, this is the coolest thing. My nieces and nephews, they're into jiu-jitsu and everything. So I was super, super proud to show them that use case. So we've been making a lot of inroads in Brazil in particular. You mentioned, emerging markets and so forth. And Brazil is one of those areas of focus for us. And one of our members of the Moonbeam Foundation team is from Brazil. And so we're really working to develop relationships there. We have multiple partners. We're working with other companies to blockchain enable their applications. And so in this case, I believe it was Weblock, who was the partner down there, who connected us with the folks at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And yeah, I think the BD function's kind of handled, by other folks at the foundation. So I wasn't super close to the deal, but yeah, it came together, relatively quickly. And, I think it's just a really cool use case to say, hey, look, like, these are certifications of the kind of thing that you want to be able to prove. This is the kind of thing that belongs on blockchain, right? You want to be able to, prove that this certification is real. And I think, we're starting to see other applications, especially in Brazil, like, for example, the concert tickets. They have a big problem with fraudulent, concert tickets, because, you could take a picture of the barcode, even if they're digital and so forth. So I think longer term, you're just going to see a lot more things where people can prove that they've achieved or that they own something. And this is amazing because it's just such a, easy to understand use case, real world use case that's solved using blockchain. And we couldn't be more excited to have them select Moonbeam to track those certifications.
So cool. This is the kind of stuff we need. And again, especially in a place like Brazil, which, neighbors countries like Argentina and has their own currency issues as well. These are the opportunities that I feel like really move the needle. The Brazilian population hears about this. They go, oh, this is really cool. What else can crypto do? They get to be a little more curious. And then, the trickle effect happens and the rest takes care of itself. So I absolutely love this. Another thing that you guys are doing is you're really moving the needle in emerging markets, more specifically Latin America. Is there another reason that, you guys have penetrated that market besides the obvious Venezuela and Argentina with currencies that are just an absolute joke? And my apologies to the Argentinians and Venezuelans that are listening, but your currency is horrendous to say the least. Like it, and I feel terrible for them. I spend time in Mexico, and there's a bunch of, I have Argentinian friends, and they tell me about doctors making $500 a month in Argentina, like a doctor. You come to Canada, you make a couple $100,000. You go to the States, you make $500,000. They're making $500 US a month to be a doctor. It is insane. Feel terrible for them. Hopefully this new Milei or whatever his name is, I'm sure you've seen this guy, the new libertarian leader of Argentina. He's a nutcase, but he's sort of a beauty. Like,
he's kind of wild.
He's wild. Produces great content, but a little off topic here. Back on topic. Why crypto in Latin America? Why blockchain in Latin America in particular?
Yeah, I think, emerging markets, I think this is probably kind of well known, but, we in Canada, North America, Western Europe, we take things like banking for granted. We
Yeah.
take, the fact that we can get a bank account, that we can transact, that we can send wires, for granted. And I think, a real eye opener for me was over the last, year and a half when there were all these issues with some of these banks that were serving crypto companies. And it just was like, okay, well, there was a period of time when we didn't have a bank account, the Moonbeam Foundation, and we're just kind of like running around, trying to find a banking partner. And so you really start to feel it then. But these emerging markets, it goes beyond that. As you said, they're currency that can't be relied upon and so forth. And so they really get it. And I think this is, an analogy I would look at is like, in Canada and in North America, United States, back in, I don't know, the 90s to like early 2000s, we had excellent telecommunication infrastructure deployed everywhere with all these wires. And we were way ahead of Europe and definitely ahead of, sort of Africa and other areas like that. And then, out of necessity, Europe deployed much better mobile technology very quickly. And they just sort of jumped over and they leapfrogged the having to deploy all these lines everywhere to people's houses. They just went straight to wireless. And so I think in that sense, you're going to see the same with these emerging markets. They're going to be quick to adopt blockchain technology and crypto because their current financial rails are terrible. And so instead of spending all this time, money with probably, in some cases, not the most, on the level of governments. And, instead of spending the time doing all that and trying to fix all that, just jump straight to, crypto and blockchain. And so emerging markets are where there is a tremendous amount of interest in solving real world problems that goes beyond just sort of, speculation on tokens and so forth. And Brazil is one of those. And, as I mentioned, we have a key member of the team that's from Brazil. So that certainly helps. But it just seemed like there was a lot of teams coming to us for grants and interested in working with Moonbeam. I think they had heard of us. We have an ambassador program as well that's very active in various communities. And there was just a lot of inbound interest. And we said, well, let's pull on this thread. And it's been going very well. And I think hasn't sort of been dominated already by one of the other players in the space. But we're looking at others too. We're spending a bunch of time exploring Vietnam right now. And we'll probably look at some other markets as well. But right now, I mean, we're having a lot of success in Brazil, and we want to keep building on that momentum.
I love the phone connectivity analogy. That is just straight gold. Just a little antidote here. Again, as I spend a decent amount of time every year in Mexico, don't meet too many Brazilians, but meet tons of Argentinians. Again, they just come up so they can participate in an economy that's doing decent. The Mexican peso isn't too bad. And that's what they do. And then they send it back to, their own bank accounts or their families. Every single one of the Argentinians I meet, girls and guys, they all have a Binance or another crypto account. My friends in Toronto, I would say maybe 20, 30% of my network outside of crypto has a crypto account. And it's strictly for usually aping into shitcoins or hodling a bit of Bitcoin or ETH or Solana, right? Otherwise, it's strictly like I get texts, Matt, when's the next bonk? When's the next Doge? When's the next Shiba Inu? That's all it is. It's just like, how can I throw a couple $100 and hit a moon kind of thing? And then you have the Argentinians who are actually using crypto for real world use cases. They don't ape into shitcoins. They take money from Mexico, they transact it into their account, and they send it back to Argentina. And it's just like, I love seeing that. It warms my heart, and that's what we need more of. So love the work you guys are doing in LATAM. Another thing that I'd love to get into is blockchain scalability. We've seen Solana really sort of take the cake on this one. Sui as well. We had Sui on the podcast as well. That was a treat. Aptos, a lot of parachain type solutions, literally even earlier this year, or last year, Jan, Feb, March, even April, I would say all the way up until late summer of 2023, the narrative was simply Ethereum and L2s are the only way forward. Connectivity, blah, blah, blah. You have the fees, which are a shit show. And now all of the other parachain type solutions are running the show. We love to see this. What are you guys doing to work on these? And I'd love your personal take as well. Is this the way forward? Is Solana going to turn into the next ETH? Does ETH have a chance for a resurgence? The volumes haven't dropped off a cliff per se, but all of their parachains are literally going like this. They're going up into the right, and ETH is very, very slow. Even on NFTs, Solana passed ETH for NFT volume last month as well. What's your 2 cents on that? Are we going to see parachain type solutions keep buzzing, or is ETH going to have a resurgence?
Look, I think Ethereum is like a mainstay for sure. And I think what's interesting to me is that it looks as though Ethereum will become a bit like the Polkadot relay chain in the sense that, it's about the consensus. And, I think the layer twos will continue to proliferate and show success. But I think at the end of the day, to get Web 2 like scalability, there's no one chain can do that, right? That's just not possible. The number of users in the world, even if they're not transacting very much, just to handle that kind of load and that number of accounts, there's no one chain that's going to be able to do it. And so you have to have these stacks that work together in these sort of networks. I think Polkadot and Cosmos were early examples of those. And then, Ethereum had this idea about sharding, and then it turned into the L2 thing. And now you've got all these other chains doing similar strategies. Avalanche has got their subnets and so forth. So I think what we're going to see over the next little while is some tech stack consolidation. And I think it's likely that EVM will continue to play a major part there. I think a lot of the L2s continue to be EVM based and so forth. But what's going to emerge is going to have kind of these islands of interoperability. And so people running the OP stack, they'll sort of have some level of interoperability with each other. ZK Sync, they have, their strategy. And, as I mentioned, Avalanche and things like that. So that's what we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years. But then there'll probably be some kind of shakeout where, certain ones will become winners. And I think one of the things that I like about, Polkadot, for example, is that it's a little top down where Gav's kind of said, okay, this is kind of how it works, like the shared security model. But everyone understands it and like has adopted it. Whereas these other, say, take, for example, like, the OP stack for Optimism, people are launching all these chains with the OP stack, but then they got to figure out how to glue them together. And they're only figuring that out now. And it is a bottoms up approach, which I like. It's kind of like grassroots and they're going to figure it out together. But I think that that's going to cost valuable time. I think that over the next few years, getting that right and secure could prove difficult because it's not only just having secure messaging between them and so forth, but just the security of those assets and consensus among those chains will be difficult. So I do think, some form of Ethereum L2 will exist, for the foreseeable future and probably play a major part in the world. But there's a lot of room for a lot of different stacks. I mean, if you look at the Web 2 world, you have like a lot of different industry players beyond just the Amazon, Google, and Microsoft cloud. You have a lot of other key pieces of infrastructure that, have emerged as pillars of that. And I think we're going to see the same thing play out over the next 5 to 10 years in blockchain. And I think there's a lot of room, but I think tech will matter in the coming, 5 to 10 years. And I think that's when Polkadot and substrate-based chains will have their time in the sun because people will realize the capabilities that are there and that they're built for long-term scalability.
Well said. Last question here, Aaron. 2024 trends, predictions. We don't have to get into any price prediction nonsense, but trends as a whole. Everyone's still saying DeFi. Everyone's saying DePIN is going to blow up. Everyone's still saying Solana ecosystem is going to blow up. What's on your sort of hot take board? What is on the Aaron Evans hot take board for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do think like DeFi is great, and I think there's going to be a resurgence of that. But at the same time, I think the number of people in the world that will directly participate in DeFi, I think
so
is
small,
somewhat limited. It's not as broad as like, social applications and this kind of thing. I think in this next cycle, what we're going to see is some meaningful enterprise adoption. And so where there are Web 2 companies or traditional companies that have realized that, this blockchain thing is real, there will be real use cases like, the Jiu-Jitsu kind of thing, where there are certain things where users are going to start to expect more ownership and sovereignty over their data, and they're going to want it on the blockchain. And these companies will start to enter, and that's really going to drive a lot of growth. And I think they're going to want to go to places where it's easy for their developers to get going. So ecosystems with strong SDKs and really top-notch developer relations teams and support and documentation, which, Moonbeam has excellent. That's I think what we excel at. We're well known for providing great support to developers. Our documentation is really, really good. So I think that'll be a key driver. And I think a lot of these real world assets, whether those are financial instruments or actually just real world things like Jiu-Jitsu certifications, I think, loyalty programs will be, continue to be a big thing where you have platforms where there's more utility to those loyalty points, and that kind of thing flourishes in a blockchain kind of environment. So that's kind of how I see. I mean, for Moonbeam ourselves, I mean, we have a lot going on, and on the scalability side, I think we'll probably reduce block times by a half to help with speed and so forth. So that's sort of more on our radar. We're going to continue with real world assets and gaming and emergency markets as part of our tenets of our strategy. But yeah, in the space in general, I really think it's going to be some form of meaningful enterprise entry into the space.
I love that. Aaron, what an episode. Really appreciate you coming on. I had an absolute blast here and learned a ton. And you have an open invite anytime you and Moonbeam want to come on for round 2. Hit me up, because we barely scratched the surface here. And we didn't even get into all the cool shit that you do, especially for the YouTube viewers. Aaron has an absolutely electric background of Star Wars Legos. These things are so legit. The spaceships, the monsters, so freaking cool. I'm a big Star Wars guy myself. So on round 2, we'll have to get into all that. But until then, wishing you and the team all the best. Before you go, please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and Moonbeam online and on socials.
Yeah, so on Twitter, at @ARon2048. So that's the word double, and then A Ron. If you've seen the Key and Peele
Aaron, hilarious.
Aaron. So @ARon2048. And Moonbeam, the best place to go is moonbeam.network. The website, the document has all the documentation and links to all our socials and so forth.
Love it. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and can't wait for round 2.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Folks, what an episode with Aaron Evans, head of ops at Moonbeam Foundation. He was on fire all episode. We talked everything. Blockchain scalability, scalable L1s, Polkadot, you name it, we discussed it. Huge shout out to Aaron and the Moonbeam team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope you did, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Eustace, my amazing sound editor, you are the GOAT. Appreciate you. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.